Hi, and welcome to the Science Curriculum Preview for the 5th, 6th weeks for kindergarten. Today we're going to go over Unit 6, which is Organisms in the Environment, Part 1. On the right side of the screen, you'll see an infographic that you might have noticed hanging in the science lab. This really kind of shows how we approach the life science standards all the way from K through 5 here in Birdville, and we'll talk about what this infographic can um, show you and means to you as a kindergarten teacher in just a few minutes. As always, we're going to start off with some key planning documents that are found in Forethought. Today we're going to be using 3 documents, the pacing guide, the unit overview, and I'm also going to refer to the units of study right up here. So let's start off with a year at a glance view and kind of see where we've been as far as life science standards go and where we're going. If you'll notice back in the second 6 weeks, it actually has 2 units in the second 6 weeks. We had some time in the fall where we talked about seasonal plants. And so if you'll remember, students were exposed to some of the life science standards that deal with plants, and those come back around into the 6 weeks, but we also talk a little bit about living and non-living and basic needs of plants and things like that here in the 5th, 6th week. So I just wanted to remind you that those things have been introduced a little bit to your students. When we look at the 5th, 6th weeks and the 6th, 6th weeks, basically we are looking at living and non-living things, living things having basic needs and producing offspring, looking at evidence of an organism's basic needs. So really focusing on evidence of that, and then doing some sorting with plants and animals by their color, size, body covering, leaf shape, as well as some other things. In the 6 weeks, if we look ahead, it's going to be focused on parts of plants and parts of animals, and then really going more back into what was covered in the second 6 weeks with parent plants and young, and then the plant life cycle. So there you can just kind of see a couple of things and how those things spiral back through. So let's take a look and see where the biomes fit in with this. This is the same infographic that we had on the first slide, and I've just taken the top of the infographic poster and then put it on the left-hand side. So in kindergarten, many years ago, kindergarten had some specialized environments that they would use to look at their life science standards, and those we haven't had in several years, to really open up kindergarten to use whatever environment fits well for their introduction of these very first looks into life science. So that could be the farm, it could be a park, it could be water environments, it could be a forest. You're welcome to use anything that STEM Scopes and AIMS has as the environment or the habitat, because we're just starting to learn with that. So you really don't have any constraints as far as what habitats or biomes you use. But looking ahead so that you understand how the biomes fit in later on in your students' experiences, you can see that first grade, when they talk about their life science standards, they're going to focus in their application and look at the lens of their life science standards through the forest, and then later in the 6 weeks in the desert, and then so on. You can see the pattern that moves through. And then by the time we get back to 5th grade, the students have really gotten a chance to take an in-depth look at many different biomes and environments, and then they can apply that in 5th grade as well. So I just like to give teachers an understanding of kind of the basics and then where they'll be going, so you can get an overall view of how to really help your students frame their learning. Okay, so let's take a look at Unit 6, and this is the 5th 6 weeks, but remember we had 2 units in the second 6 weeks, so this is actually Unit 6, and we only have 3 content standards, but it's going to be super important that we also be sure that we focus in on our partnering process skills, because those are super important skills for our students to be able to start developing and building that foundation. So don't just think about the content, but also think about spending some time on that as well. Okay, so speaking of the process skills, I want to be sure that you're aware of some great resources specifically for your kinder students for process skills if you're looking for some things for that. And so I want to direct you to a STEM Scopes. This is a screenshot from there. And if you go to the grades, there's a section called Teacher Toolbox. And I know many of you have used that before, so this is just a reminder of some of the things that are in there. When you get into the toolbox, there'll be a menu that goes across horizontally like this. And if you pull down under process skills, there's two places that are of importance for kinder teachers. One of them is called the tools primer. And there's a teacher side that has this little orange T. And then there's a student side that has handouts that you would use with the students. And this is going to include every single tool that's listed in your standards. There's a little mini lesson, and then there's instructions on how your students can practice. The other place I want to draw your attention is the process skills primer that's specifically for kindergarten. And again, there's a teacher side and a student side as well. So let's take a look at what is in there. So here's just two sections from the tools primer, so some things that are listed for this 6 weeks. One of them is a collecting net, and you have these in your science lab. And so there's a picture of the collecting net, and then there's also these little cards that you can print out and put for environmental print around your classroom. And then on the student side, there are little practice sheets that would help them understand the function of that, as well as taking them outside and using them on the playground. And then here you can see also an aquarium, gives you some instructions on how to make a simple aquarium. But remember, we have all of those materials in the science lab ready for you to use as well. Another place in the teacher toolbox I had directed your attention was the process skills primer, and this is going to have a teacher side and student side as well. But this is really great because it helps frame exactly where you're supposed to go, how deep in the scope of it for kindergarten. So those might be some places you can get some ideas when you're looking to include those process skills. Also, just kind of talking about some of the tools and the process skills, I want to I want to thank Heather B. Craft again for inviting me out. This happened last 6 weeks when they were finishing up their rock unit, and we were just talking about how to organize some of the stations and one approach that she used for getting her kindergarten students into the science lab. And if you haven't had a chance to get your students in there, the spring is the really great time. Some of the upper level grade levels are not using the lab quite as much as they did in the first semester, and your kids are probably independent enough now to really be able to understand how to use this very specialized and wonderful space. And so here in these pictures you can see the overview. She had some parent volunteers come in for the day, and she had each one of the parents had a station, and then they manned the station and the students rotated through about every 5 or 6 minutes, and that freed her up to be able to walk around to the different stations. And so she had detailed things for the students to experience, practicing with some of the tools there, as well as doing some predictions. So this is a really great opportunity to incorporate those process skills along with the content. So just a little reminder about your science lab and maybe one way that you could utilize that. I also grabbed some images from the Science Toolkit Facebook page. Now, this is Dr. Julie Jackson's interactive word wall page on Facebook, and these were just some things that some teachers had submitted as far as some of their word walls and their environmental print that kind of go along with this 6 weeks as well. If you haven't utilized this website or Dr. Jackson's webpage, you're wanting to remember a little bit about how to get access to that, if you'll go back into the just-in-time learning from the third 6 weeks, it's back there in Canvas and it's there, and I have a real quick tutorial on how to get to some of these places for Kinder. Okay, so let's just talk briefly about what's in the unit overview and how that can help you with the planning. This unit overview is 4 pages long, and I just want to highlight some of the things that you'll find in there. On the first page, you're going to see 2 things I think that will be very helpful for you as you plan out your 6 weeks. One is probably something you're very aware of, are connections that you have with some of the other content areas, but also the guiding questions there at the bottom. So by the end of the unit, the students really should be able to either show you or answer the following questions, and that's going to show a thorough understanding of their mastery of the standards. On the next page, on the second page, there's always going to be a little section about the process skills, and you'll notice I've mentioned the teacher toolbox there again and tell you how to get to that, as well as start to break down exactly the framing for the standards. So where should we be going with living and non-living? What should we be including about basic needs, physical characteristics, and so forth. And then I've also got a couple of screenshots of some places I think are um, probably going to be places that you want to visit either in STEM scopes or aims. And then finally on the last couple of pages, I take a very detailed look at each standard, and then I list out places I think that are really going to be helpful for you in STEM scopes, as well as aims, and then some other places that we have in EduSmart, as well as some supplemental materials like the Delta readers, and then some of the tools in the science lab. So it's got everything laid out there for you to really create the instruction that's best for your students. So as we wrap up, next steps, I just want to remind you back in Canvas, just to the right of where you access this curriculum preview, there is a just-in-time learning, a little s'more there that's got some really good information and I think some resources that will help you. Every curriculum preview, I try to make something very relevant for you and something that's timely. So I just want to show you what's in here before we end up together. So let me pull it over. So this time of year, we always get lots and lots of information of things that are coming up for the spring as well as the summer. And so this is a great place for me to compile that for you, and you can take a look. So there's lots of PD offerings that are coming up that are focused on the life sciences, as well as some opportunities for students. Specifically, Britt has a really great primary program for students. It's a Saturday story time, but then they also have field trips with uh, their Bella program that's specifically designed for early childhood. And so if you haven't heard of that, you might want to check that out. Some of these resources are free and some of them cost, so you might want to just click on those links if anything looks interesting to you. And then the last thing I would just want to note is if you scroll down to the bottom, I've created a visual glossary of some of the resources that are available to you in your science lab, as well as some field trip connections. So if we click on that, it's going to open up a Google slide, and I've sent out lots of new resources for life science to your campus, and they're in the science lab waiting for you to use them. So this is really just a visual guide to help you know what to look for when you go into the science lab and know what's new and maybe what has come in the years past. So I'm just going to flip through here very quickly and just highlight some things that are specific to kindergarten. We have lots of materials for terrariums and aquariums, and I've got some little tutorials on there on how to make those. Remind you also that we have collecting nets and we have bug viewers that can be used. And then new this year are lots and lots of animal models that I've purchased. And on the boxes, you'll see that there is a label on there, and I've put the specific grade level. So it'll help you identify what grade level it's used for as well as the standard. So as we get into body parts for kinder, I think that that'll be great. Those are great little ocean animals, and they're beautiful. We also have another tub of animals that might be useful for you. These are for 5th grade and so forth. So you can see there's lots of different things that I've purchased. There's some seeds that might be useful for kindergarten. And then I've also got a reminder about your Lakeshore Learning Kits there, so to give you a visual of where those are, and your Delta readers. And if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom, there's just a link for some field trip connections for life science if you're aware of those. So again, this can be found at the bottom of the s'more, and the s'more can be found back in Canvas just to the right of the curriculum preview that you're viewing now. So that was just a quick overview. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great 6 weeks, and as always, I would love to see what you're doing with your students. Send me pictures, invite me out, and I'd love to come see the great things that are happening in Kinder. Have a great day.